Serengeti Safari.
Lurking in the tall grass of the East African savannas are multitudes of grasshoppers and lizards hunting for them. Towering above these ground dwellers is an aristocratic-looking bird whose speciality is killing by stamping. There's a puzzle about this long-legged hunter. Is it a stork or is it an eagle? Its body and long legs are certainly like those of a stork, but its head and hooked beak are more like an eagle's. However, its claws are blunt and short and virtually unable to grip prey or even grasp a branch. And rather than flying, it marches almost everywhere on foot. They're commonly known as secretary birds, probably not for their long legs or fine feathers, but on account of the dark quills on their heads, reminiscent of the quill pens that centuries ago lawyers' clerks used to tuck behind their ears. The only occasion secretary birds take to the air for any time is during their courtship display towards the end of the dry season, when they circle high in the sky over the plains and dive, groaning and growling. In general, the secretary bird leads an earthbound existence, although not quite as earthbound as ostriches. It's no coincidence that ostriches and secretary birds have features in common. Their long legs are designed for walking, and their long necks give a better view of the surroundings. In this area of Tsavo in Kenya, secretary birds and ostriches share the same habitat and often meet. A couple of young females are displaying at a secretary bird that's landed near them. It's odd to see an ostrich pirouetting at a different species. This display is usually reserved for other ostriches. Several large flamboyant birds live in the grasslands of Tsavo. Like the secretary bird, a bustard will travel long distances in search of different types of food, but it steers well clear of several food items which the secretary birds actively search out. A back-fanged sand snake. The aim is to flush the prey out of the grass and then kill it with violent blows from the feet. The blows are aimed just behind the snake's head to break the spine. They're delivered with such force the ground shudders as if hit by a heavy mallet. When the snake no longer moves, it is swallowed whole. Secretary birds are large and powerful, and other animals often get out of their way. But there's one bird they're wary of, the martial eagle. As Africa's largest eagle, it can seize animals up to the size of a stork or a young antelope, and its presence in the neighborhood is particularly worrying when the secretary birds are preparing to raise a family. It's at the end of the dry season that the secretary birds begin to nest, their calls floating across the quiet dawn of the plains. A family of bat-eared foxes catch the first rays of the sun. Later, the heat will drive them into their burrows underground. Secretary birds mate for life, but may split up during the drier months, coming together again to breed. Now they must decide where to nest. The male leads the way. A pair of secretary birds may be together for 20 years. During this time, they build 6 or more nests in their territory, which is around 30 square kilometers. Each season, the male must choose which one to renovate. For some reason, this one isn't right. When the male has finally selected a site, he picks up a stick and tries to lure his mate into joining him. The male bows to the female to entice her into the nest. The two are difficult to tell apart. She is on the left with slightly redder skin on the face, while his is more orange. The next move in the ritual is for the male to bring in another stick. This time it's her turn to call him back to the nest. From this point on, they'll do the building together. They'll make a solid platform about 1 meter wide and line it with dry grass. Then they'll attempt to raise a family. This area of Kenya has a substantial population of secretary birds, and from here to Mount Kilimanjaro, 130 kilometers away, thousands of pairs will be starting to breed. The first egg will be laid 2 weeks after they mate successfully. In October, the short rains begin. A flappet lark displays. The secretary birds are drenched and will warm up in the early morning sun for an hour or two before leaving the nest. At this point, they roost together. Their breeding coincides with the flush of insect life that now emerges. Some termites have hatched, and everywhere there are winged termite alates dispersing to found new colonies. Secretary birds will not reject something because it is small. They're like storks in this respect. The termite alates are full of fat, and the birds pick up as many as they can before the alates burrow into the ground. The waterholes fill up. Black-headed herons stride in to hunt for frogs. After 5 months without rain, the arrival of the waters, though full of Tsavo's red soil, is a relief. The final touches to the nest are surprising. The birds bring in pieces of animal dung, perhaps to cushion the eggs. Two or three eggs are laid, but the chances of them all hatching successfully are slim. The nest is exposed, and under the African sun, the eggs can easily overheat. The female constantly tends the eggs and shades them with her body. The two birds take turns at incubating the eggs during the day, but the female always does the night shift, and the male goes to roost in a nearby tree. On the far side of the secretary bird's territory, the martial eagles are nesting too. These formidable eagles break off branches over a metre long with their talons, something a secretary bird could never do, but both species use their bills in the same way during nest building. The secretary birds are nervous of the eagles. A martial eagle is essentially a powerful pair of claws on a 2-metre wingspan, and it will seize any young bird it can find, including the secretary bird's chicks. Only one chick has hatched, and it is desperate for water, but the mother has none to give. She has yet to go to the waterhole. The chick is only a few days old, and one or the other parent is here to protect it at all times. Shading the downy bundle from the sun is vital in this open nest. The male brings in another piece of dung. He does this throughout the period the chick is in the nest. Then the pair change over, exchanging guard duty for hunting, something they do 4 or 5 times a day. The male's first priority is to give the chick water, then food. A secretary bird's toes are short and blunt and adapted for walking, not gripping. While most birds of prey bring back food in their claws and then tear it up, secretary birds have to transport food in their crops and then regurgitate it. A small skink. The chick can gulp down surprisingly bulky items. It has an exceptionally large gullet. However, this snake is probably too much, and the adult takes it back. Among the many animals which share the secretary bird's territory are ground hornbills. The adult hornbills have large patches of red skin which they can inflate. Their lifestyle is rather like the secretary bird's. They too are ground dwellers which hunt grasshoppers and reptiles. They flush out their prey in a similar way, but the method of execution is different. The ground hornbills are also expert snake hunters, but instead of stamping on the snakes, they crush and shake them to death. During the heat of the day, the focus of activity is the waterhole. Marabou storks joust in the sun. They spread their wings to cool off. The secretary birds are quite at ease in the baking midday sun. They pant to lose heat. Groups of secretary birds that aren't breeding this year concentrate at the dwindling supplies of water, and their presence isn't appreciated by the territorial male. That's him on the offensive. The intruders are a family with 2 full-grown youngsters. It's a struggle for the resident male to drive them all off. At the nest, the chick has to endure the heat on its own, though its thicker down helps to insulate it. It's moving about a bit now at 4 weeks, on its haunches. The chick gulps down a small rat. Then it's presented with a young spurfowl, but despite the chick's large gullet, it won't go down. Due to the secretary bird's small claws, it has difficulty gripping the prey while breaking it into manageable portions. But eventually it's swallowed. Sand snakes can grow up to 2 meters in length. They kill their rodent prey by seizing and poisoning it with fangs at the back of their mouths. So the hunter of sand snakes must make sure that its quarry is quickly immobilized. It is hard to convey the force with which a secretary bird's foot smashes into the ground. It could probably fracture your arm. The snake won't be swallowed until there's absolutely no sign of life. At the nest, the chick is beginning to get on top of its enormously long legs. It's been on its haunches for several weeks. Suddenly, becoming so tall is a new and slightly unnerving experience. Now the chick is 2 months old, a typical cropful of food might contain 20 grasshoppers, 6 lizards and a mouse. There's a sand snake too, and the chick is large enough to cope with one now. The first scattered storms of the long rains are moving towards Tsavo. The rain fell 50 kilometers away in the hills. The Tsavo River is flooding. The landscape is green and full of life, and the young secretary bird is increasingly inquisitive about its surroundings. The martial eagle is equally interested in what's happening in the neighborhood. To bystanders, the chick presents a strange sight exercising its wings, jumping over 2 meters in the air. It's some 2.5 months old now and near to fledging. The martial eagle has landed just a stone's throw from the young secretary bird. The male is on the alert. He's come back to feed the youngster, but now there's something far more important to take care of. The youngster is unaware of the danger. It's hungry. The male makes for the vantage point of a tree. Then it launches its attack. The eagle is shaken by the blows from the secretary bird's feet, and the youngster is safe for the moment. But the martial eagle hasn't given up yet. The secretary bird is still very disturbed by the eagle being so near the nest. The chick remains oblivious to the danger. Suddenly it gets carried away with its own flying and takes off in a gust of wind. Not a bad performance for a maiden flight, but now the chick finds itself on the ground. It's bewildered. The chick's instincts tell it to get back to the security of the nest. By now the male is highly agitated. With its youngster looking so insecure, the eagle may strike at any moment. Suddenly, the female arrives at the nest to feed the youngster. It takes her a while to realize that her chick is down below. She flies down to protect it. The male will tolerate the eagle no longer. A hammer blow on its back, and the king of the African eagles is sent on its way. And the chick can be fed in peace. Over the next few months, it'll accompany its parents and slowly learn how to hunt for snakes and other prey. Classifying secretary birds is difficult. People now think they're closer to eagles than to storks. A long time ago, their eagle ancestors probably took to hunting at ground level. Over generations of walking, the claws became blunt, but the legs gradually evolved to be longer and stronger. The result is the secretary bird, in a class of its own. The only bird on the African savannah that has perfected the art of dispatching its prey by stamping on it.